Hi, and welcome back to another episode of Tuba People TV, where we talk about all things Arnold Jacobs all of the time. Puddles in the corner and I are in beautiful, almost sunny Orlando, Florida, at the home of Russ Ward. Russ, it's great to see you.
Good seeing you too, Mike.
Yeah, Russ, first became aware of Russ through my good friend Bob Carpenter at Northwestern. Bob, when he got to Northwestern, would always be talking very favorably about Russ Ward down here in Orlando. Bob happens to be behind the camera at the moment. And then we finally got to meet, I think it was 2002, up in Tacoma, right? At the Harvey Phillips Northwest.
Yeah,
Big brass
probably
band.
around that time frame.
So, but you were for many years the principal tubist of the Florida Symphony here in Orlando until its unfortunate demise.
1993, April.
And Thomas is behind the camera, one of your faithful students, so you must be doing some good things here in Orlando. Occasionally. And you had some studies with Arnold Jacobs at Northwestern, correct?
Yes, I did.
I'm wondering what can you recall what drew you to Mr. Jacobs in the first place?
Well, I wanted to be an orchestral tuba player, and I was studying with Jim Self at the University of Tennessee, and Jake was known at the time as being the greatest orchestral tuba player in the world, so might as well study with the best, the one and only best. And I made an application and was accepted, and that's what happened. I was accepted there and at Yale, so it was either Jake or Toby Hanks.
No slouch there either.
Yeah, either way it would have been fun, but I really wanted to study with Jake.
Do you remember that your first lesson or two with Jacobs?
I remember the pen thing. You just toss a pen and you say, catch it, and think about everything you have to do. There's no way you can control all that, so you have to approach playing the same way. And that had a big impact on me. And so studying with him was different than studying with anybody else that I'd studied with. He had a very different perspective of teaching. And later on, he said, everything that I'm going to teach you about playing tuba, I taught you in the first lesson. And every time I thought about that, he was probably right. Everything he had to say, he said in the very first lesson. But you need to have that reminder constantly.
He unpacked it a bit more.
Oh, gosh.
But it was all there in the first lesson.
Oh, yeah.
Well, you mentioned unlike studying with anybody else. In what ways? What was different between studying with Jake and, you don't have to name names or anything, but just other people?
Well, he focused on musicianship and artistry and growing as an artist as opposed to technically making something happen. I mean, he didn't ignore technical stuff, but and he really got into one of his phrases was trumpet playing on tuba. Just simple little things like that really had an impact over time.
Let the tuba do its amplification. Don't try to do it yourself.
Yeah.
Just think trumpet.
Yeah.
Yeah, I remember hearing that. And just for our audience's sake, just the whole pen thing. Maybe you have a pen there.
Yes, I do.
So what I'm going to guess is he would throw or give you the pen, and then he would ask you.
Well, no. He'd say, Russ, Mike, catch the pen.
Nice.
Now, think about all the muscles in your body that you have to control to catch that.
Uh-huh.
The calculation that you have to make in your brain, you're visually picking up the trajectory of the pen through the air, and you're making the calculation where it's going to be at a given point in time, and you're moving your body in such a way to catch the pen, moving muscles in your back, and so you don't fall out of the chair. There's no way you can consciously control that.
Yeah.
So playing tuba is the same thing. You have to imagine what you want to sound like, what you want to do with your sound, and make it happen. You can't control every little muscle in your lips or your fingers or whatever to possibly play.
So go for the product of catching the pen rather than the processes of catching the
Exactly.
pen.
Yes.
Product over processes, or process.
Yes.
Well, that's pretty good. I'd have to say that's a good memory. And so that was in your first lesson or two.
Yes, that was my very first lesson.
Do you remember the first time you heard him play in a lesson? Or at some point?
It wasn't what I had expected. It was,
What did you expect?
I don't know what I expected,
Okay.
but the stuff that came out of his bell was awesome. The things that he could do from my perspective at the time. It was really interesting. And it was him playing in a studio was different than him playing with the orchestra. But
how so?
Well, when he's demonstrating something in the studio, he's just kind of demonstrating it just for practicality. But when he's with the orchestra, he doesn't have to worry about demonstrating a particular thing. He can just perform.
So maybe he was more the showman on stage.
Oh, so much more to show him.
And so in the studio.
Yeah.
Bob and I were talking in his interview about our first time hearing him, and it was just all this dirt and crap in his sound that was. It really recalibrated what I thought beautiful was. When I first heard that right there, I had to recalibrate what I thought beautiful was, because that was not beautiful, what he did, and yet it was gorgeous.
Yeah.
It was amazing.
Yeah, it was very different. Unlike anything I'd heard up to that moment.
It's great.
So.
Russ, you were at Northwestern you did the Masters, and you were there for, you said, a year of Civic?
Yes.
And then you came down here to Orlando. So you had a couple of years plus a couple more lessons that you come back for touch-up.
That's about it. Yeah.
What were some, if you can remember any other like fixes that he might have introduced to you, or topics or subjects?
Well, one of the big things was buzzing the mouthpiece. He started very early on having me buzz the mouthpiece, and initially I thought buzzing the mouthpiece was a waste of time. I never really messed with that when I was prior to Jake, but since he's the master, I figured if you study with him, you do what he says. So I did it, and it was a few months went by, and then all of a sudden my tone just changed radically. And I was a pretty good player, but for a radical change in my tone to take place, and I attribute that all to buzzing a mouthpiece or buzzing a rim. It was really made a big difference in the end product.
Did he put any restrictions on any of that, like the rim or the mouthpiece, in terms of what to buzz, how long you can buzz, or anything, or is it just?
Not really. Whatever I felt like buzzing. His favorite tune was Pop Goes the Weasel. I kind of got a kick out of it, and I'm sure most Jake students like Pop Goes the Weasel. It covers a wide tessitura and all kinds of styles. You can do all kinds of things with it. It's fun to play, easy to remember.
Yeah. There you have it. What is it about the mouthpiece buzzing? What did he tell you? Why did he tell you it was important, if at all?
Well, you don't have the resistance of the horn, so you're going to need to use so much more air, or wind, as he liked to refer to it. So it's going to develop your breathing capabilities. It's also going to develop your concept of pitch, because you have to buzz in your accurate pitch in order to play accurately. And that just makes sense from physics.
Yeah.
And I think a lot of people don't look at the actual physics of performance, of performing on their instrument, what the demands are. And if you don't understand that, you can't make it happen. So, in one sense, he was doing the little pen thing, so you can't control all these things, but you have to develop the abilities to manage the physics of your instrument.
Yeah, so he was really, sounds like he was after getting you to practice your artistry without the being unfettered
Yeah,
from the
exactly.
the valves.
You don't
or
have to
from
worry
the
about
side.
pushing the buttons.
Yeah, so you can really practice styles, like you mentioned, different styles,
Oh yeah.
that sort of thing. What about in your time in Civic? Did you get just a weekly lesson through Civic, or did you do a weekly lesson with him and then a lesson through Civic, or how'd that work with you?
Well, there were two of us in Civic Orchestra. It was Gene Dowling and myself, and we would get together every Friday morning for an hour and a half before the matinee concert on Fridays. And so we'd get together, go have lunch, and go to the orchestra. And the two of us were in this session, and he'd basically go over the works that the orchestra was performing that week.
Oh, okay, so it would be de jour.
Yeah, it was kind of cool.
Okay.
And it was fun.
Yeah.
And at that time, they were using the players from the Civic Orchestra to sub with the Chicago Symphony, and Gene was doing a lot of that.
But you got to play with him. You got to play with him a bit.
Yeah, they couldn't get hold of Gene one time, and I got a call 9 o'clock on a Monday morning. Russ, get to Medina Temple by 10. Playing Mahler's second.
Not only playing it, but recording it.
Yeah, recording, yeah.
With Claudio Abbado.
Yeah.
Do you remember much about that? Is that etched in your memory?
Yeah, kinda. I wasn't even dressed. It was 9 o'clock. I was sitting in the living room of my apartment in my underwear. Get a cab. I remember when I got there, it seemed like Clevenger was the first one that saw me. And he didn't say hi to me or anything. He just said, Roddy! Roddy Law was the personnel manager.
Yeah.
He just yelled it, Roddy, what's he doing here?
Oh, there's a confidence builder.
That made me feel really good. And then Jay Friedman came over. Oh, don't let him get to you. You're going to do fine. Come on, we'll work this out. So, and Kleinhammer was really nice. He made sure that I got all my entrances. He was helping me count bars, make sure I didn't screw any of that up. And I did miss a big entrance. It was that tuba with the bass thing near the end. Dum, bum, 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 bum.
Right.
Yeah, I missed that. And Crisafulli stood up during the recording session, waved his arm. Excuse me, maestro. I made a mistake. Crisafulli took the hit.
Oh, man.
He stopped the recording, went back, and so that I could get the lick.
Wow, what a nice gift. What a great gift. Wow. That's a great story.
And something that makes it just a little bit better, they couldn't get hold of Gene because he was visiting a girl the night before and decided to have breakfast that day, I guess.
That sounds familiar. Hi, Gene. Well, that's great. Well, do you have any memories of once you were probably just trying to keep where you were, keep on track, to think about what Herseth sounded like, or any of those guys?
Oh, it's something else. Just looking down to my right and seeing Herseth there, and Crisafulli and Friedman.
This was, what year was this? 70?
It was 70. It was 76.
76?
Yeah, it was the early months of 76. And so I did that recording, and then the next week they were doing Alpine Symphony. So both Gene and I did that, and Gennady Rodosvensky was conducting.
Wow.
And I remember Ray Still was complaining about how long of a baton he was using, and he wouldn't stand on a podium, he couldn't see him. But that was interesting, hearing some inside bickering.
Yeah, definitely. Well, look, Russ, it's great to see you. I can't believe that we made it finally down to Orlando to interview you. You've been on the list for quite some time.
Oh,
I really appreciate you.
that means I'm real old.
Well, it hasn't been that long. But as usual, Puddles comes prepared with a gift. We'd like to present you with this genuine Tuba People TV reusable water bottle.
Oh.
And you can put any liquid in it of your choice.
I've got some on the side porch. Thank you, Mike.
Thank you, Russ. It's really good to see you.
Good seeing you too.
And now back to you. Well, after we stopped shooting, we came up with something else to talk about that sounds really interesting. And Russ, can you tell us about your experience playing second tuba on Shostakovich 4 next to Jacobs with the Chicago Symphony?
Yeah, Haitink was conducting, and it's just a lot of. I actually got to sit next to him while he was performing.
Yeah.
And I had to match that. There's a lot of unison stuff, a lot of low stuff, a lot of delicate stuff.
Yeah.
And it really became evident how extreme, he played. The extreme loud, the extreme soft, and the delicacy that he had. It was really, that was probably one of my biggest learning experiences with Jake.
Did you, he didn't have a lot of air. I think at his maximum in his life, he only had about 5 liters. And when I was studying with him in the early 80s, to begin with, I think he was down like 3.5 or something like that.
Yeah, he always told me he had about 3.5 liters of capacity. What
did you notice? Because there's some not short phrases in some of that music,
He was a master of subphrasing and a master of breathing, and that's what he did. He made it happen.
Sitting next to him, was it evident or obvious where he was breathing, or was it even cloaked at 2 feet like it was up on the balcony?
Well, I probably had about a 5 or 6 liter lung capacity at that time. But I had to keep up with him.
Wow.
I didn't realize how loud he actually could play until I had to sit next to him. I didn't realize how soft he had to play until I sat next to him.
Yeah. Pretty amazing.
Yeah, it was definitely a mind-blowing experience.
What about the pre-concert? Did you notice any pre-concert ritual with him in terms of getting ready to play?
No, he just he would never really warm up because he always said he never warmed down. So why does he need to warm up? He's playing all the time.
Yeah.
And he just think about what he wanted to sound like. He just made it happen.
Do you have any thoughts on how he could sound so, he would spend his days, like many days a week, he would be teaching from maybe 10 to 5 or 11 to 6 without a lunch break. he'd be packing in the lessons, and then he'd go. And,
He had food.
Yeah, we bought him food for sure. But how do you think he managed to sound so good after spending the day instructing others?
He knew what he wanted to sound like. He just made it happen. He was a master of that skill, that artistry.
Just a direct connection from the thoughts to the lips.
And he got to work with all those other guys in that section.
Yeah.
I mean, yeah, that was a nice place to go to work.
All right. Well, thanks. Thanks for
bet.
that. Great.